Hello there, welcome to the Meaningful Stitch. This is episode 5 and I am Amy Palco and I'm coming to you from Edinburgh, Scotland. And this is my digital home from home, a place where I get to share with you my knitting practice and my knitting projects. But before I get on to all of that, I just wanted to share with you a card that I chose for us for today from the Sacred Rebel Oracle, which if you've been watching for a while now, you'll know it's one of my favourite decks. It's not my only deck by a long way, but it's one that I seem to be very drawn to at the moment. And this is the card that I chose for us. Can you see this? Collaborative Dreaming. The artwork on this deck is just outstanding. And so I'm going to read you a little bit from the guidebook, which says, "Your heart is big enough to dream not only for yourself, but for a new humanity. Imagine a world that is healed with respect, understanding, and with community that fosters life. Even your dreams that relate to you alone will contribute positively to the greater good, because that is the nature of your heart. Your heart naturally and intelligently cooperates in a grand scheme of loving creativity, working to heal the hearts of the world. The heart creates win-win situations that benefit the individual and the collective." And there was this other little section I wanted to share too, which says, "You are no longer to think of yourself as the lone wolf. Yes, you have your unique path to tread, but you now have tasks to complete for your own growth and your greater good that require more than a one-man band. You will still do your own work, of course. However, others are on their way to help you. There's only so much a single drop of water can do on its own, though it is precious. Together, those drops can become a wave and make a considerable impact in the world. You are part of a wave of loving consciousness, and you are meant to be exploring collaborative dreams, healing relationships, and conscious communities." I've been thinking a lot about conscious community and connecting with compassion and love, and really wanting to contribute, I suppose, my own part to that through things like this podcast. I've got a few things to share with you over the course of this next half hour or so, which I think will contribute positively towards conscious community, and collaboration and connection. And before I get on to all of the knitting, which you can see some of here, I've got a couple of announcements to make. And the first one is about a giveaway. So in the next podcast, which I hope to record and get out on the 6th of November, it'll be the day before my birthday. And so I wanted to do a birthday giveaway. And my auntie, who is the incredible talent behind the Cocoon Tree project bags, got in touch and said that she would like to contribute some beautiful bags for our birthday giveaway. And so I would love to do that with you. And so I'm going to show you the bags first, and then I'm going to tell you how you can enter to win them. So she's been exceptionally generous, and the bags that she's contributed to this are just really exquisite. So we're going to have 3 sets of project bags, and this is the first one. So we have this medium size project bag and a little notions purse, and inside you can see this beautiful lining. It's all exquisitely finished. You've got a little handle, and you've also got this beautiful tassel, and here's her label, the Cocoon Tree. The bottom part here is kind of like a woven fabric that's got a little bit of silver in it, and this upper fabric here it feels very velvety. It's really lovely. So this is the teal floral bag and notions purse. So that's the first one. The second one is this one here, which is a large project bag with its matching notions purse. I just love this one so much. I almost don't want to give this one away. Look at these. Look at that little guy. And then this beautiful bag here, which is it's velvety. I don't know if you can see the texture on it, but it feels so lovely. And inside we have more little ducks. So this one I think is called the Mediterranean Sunrise, and that's a second one. And then the third one is this one, which is called Heathered Check, which is this beautiful kind of turquoisey minty green with lilac and this lovely beigey check that runs through it, and this kind of like woolen material at the bottom here, and the matching notions pouch. And I'll just show the insides of these as well, because these bags are all lined so incredibly beautifully. So this is the teal floral, and this is a large project bag with the matching notions purse. So I'm going to be giving away to 3 winners each of these sets. And so what you have to do in order to enter is, over the next week, if you would like to subscribe and like this video, and then leave a comment with a question for me. So ask me anything that you would like, and whether it's about my knitting, or whether it's about the way that I view life, or whether it's about life in Scotland, or whatever it is that you would like to ask. Maybe you'd like to ask advice or knitting pattern recommendations, or whatever you would like. You can ask me a question in the comments, and then everybody who asks a question will be put into a prize giveaway draw, which I will announce next time I podcast, hopefully on the 6th of November. But that's not all, because she also sent a couple of other things. So if you are watching this after next week, then you might, I will say, actually, if you enter on YouTube, you need to do it before Halloween. There you go. And then if you're wanting to enter into a giveaway before the podcast airs on the 6th of November, but you've missed out on the YouTube one, then you can still have an opportunity to win, because I have, look at this. This is from the new collection that she's just launched for Christmas, and this is velvet in the most stunning shade of chartreuse with this gold. You see this little, because that shows you that it's got this beautiful lining inside, which is just exquisite. So a beautiful small project bag, which would be perfect for a Christmas Eve sock cast on, I think. So we've got that. And lastly, I have what she's calling her masked bag, which is this. So it's a beautiful shopping tote. It's got a big pocket in the front, which I'll show you here. There you go. So pocket in the front, and inside there's a zipped pocket. And if you look inside the zipped pocket, there's a matching mask. So you never forget your mask when you go out to your shops. The fabric is lovely too. It's these bumblebees. Do you know, in Old Scots, bumblebee is Dumbledore, which you might recognise from Harry Potter. So, which I always think is a lovely thing. So there you go. You can get a beautiful tote bag. It's got this detail on the straps as well. By entering into the giveaway on Instagram. And so if you'd like to follow me on Instagram, I'll put all of this information into the description box below, and you can follow up on all of that there. But basically that'll be a like, a follow, and a tag, I think. And that'll be available from Halloween until the 5th of November, and then I will draw winners for both the Instagram giveaway and the YouTube giveaway on the 6th of November. So there you go. However, I will just show you one last thing, which is she sent me a lovely, beautiful set of bags, also from her Christmas collection. And these are called her Tony Port colorway, which is this, I mean, this is just my color. I love this color with this bright pop of red. So we've got a slightly deeper bag here, a smaller size, and then this large, I blew myself out there a little bit, this beautiful large bag, which is just, oh, I wish I could communicate to you just how amazing this fabric feels. It's so lovely. And inside, I've got this beautiful red lining. Everything is just finished off so well. It's beautifully sewn. Her choice of fabrics are just outstanding. So I'm really excited to be able to send these out. The giveaway is going to be open up worldwide. Remember to enter into YouTube. You just have to ask me anything in the comments, and I thought that would give us an opportunity to get to know one another a little bit better. I had no idea when I began this podcast that it would be quite as successful as it has been so quickly. And so I would really like to deepen our connection a little bit more, and I'd like to do that by inviting you to ask me questions and to do a kind of public interview. and I'll answer all those questions next time as well. So it'll be a slightly different birthday format. We'll do the giveaways and I'll answer some questions. So that's the first announcement, which was a pretty big announcement to begin with. The second announcement is that one of my friends from our local knit night here in Edinburgh has just released a pattern, and she very kindly has given us a discount code for Ravelry. So this is the pattern here. It's called the Feather Lane. It's a scarf that comes in two different widths. So this is the narrow one, but it's also got a wider option. So the code, as you can see here, is Feathered Friends, and that's to get 75% off on Ravelry, and that's for the next month. So that was incredibly kind. The designer's called Spirit Bridger, and so you might want to go and download yourself a copy of that because it's an incredibly lovely pattern. So that's my two announcements. I'm gonna have a slurp of my water because those were big announcements. So we have the Cocoon Tree giveaway with the Ask Me Anything, and on Instagram I will share my post on that. All of the information is going to be in the description box, and I will also include the information for the code for Spirit's scarf as well, the Feather Lane. Okay, on to what I'm wearing. Here it is. This is one of my favourite shawls. It's actually probably one of my most worn because it's so warm and cozy. This is the striped S-Jan, and it's by Stephen West. I've used a variety of shades of alpaca. Most of it is BC Garn alpaca, but there's a little bit of drops alpaca in there as well. This section here with the enormous eyelets is Cowgirl Blue's single ply merino lace, I think in the coral colourway, and I've held it with a strand of mohair from Ching Fibre and in the colourway Punjabi. And I'll just take it off because it's a crescent shaped shawl. It's very, very large, as you can see here. It just goes on and on and on and on. I think that this was possibly the most stitchy, sorry, I've ever had on my needles at any one time. I think my mum also knitted one, and I think that she counted them, and it ended up well over 1,000 stitches. Just so you're aware, if you're thinking of casting it on, those that last section there is epic, but it's incredibly lovely. I think it almost looks a bit like a peacock. The yarn itself, this beautiful alpaca, it's incredibly soft and very, very warm, was gifted to me by my mum in last year's advent calendar. We decided last year that we would create yarn advent calendars for one another using some bought yarn, some stash yarn, some treats, and we packaged everything up into 24 little packages and swapped them so that we would have something to open on every day of December leading up to Christmas. So some of the alpaca in this was included in my advent calendar. So it was one of the first shawls that I knitted this year, I think. I love it because it's these kind of almost like harvest colours. It reminds me of apples and pumpkins and all that kind of good stuff. It feels juicy and delicious. So this year, Mum and I are doing another advent calendar for one another. We've done it a little bit differently this time because we have each chosen a piece of art to inspire the colourways that we're going to choose for one another. And so I already have, she doesn't know this yet, but she watches this, so I'm not going to give too much away. I've already got most of the yarn already ordered, and most of it's arrived. So I'll need to package that up soon and send it off to France, which is where my mum lives. So it's a lovely collaborative piece that we're doing together, and I just wanted to share with you that Helen Stewart, the shawl designer, and well, she designs a lot of socks as well these days, has a guide out for creating your own yarn advents. Because I know that there's a lot of amazing indie dyers that create beautiful yarn advents, and quite rightly they are they're priced accordingly to the amount of work and effort that goes into them, and hats off to them for the work that they do, which is really beautiful, and just the creativity is incredible. But if you are in a position that that's going to be financially unavailable to you, then maybe you would like to create an advent calendar for yourself and for a friend. And maybe you'd like to do something similar to what my mum and I are doing. The guide, I will also put a link to that in the notes below so you can follow up on that. It's got some really interesting ideas for how to create that for yourself. Okay, so that's the shawl. This is the jumper, or the sweater, as you would call it across the pond. We call it a jumper, but I'm aware that it's not a jumper everywhere. So this is by Junko Okamoto's Magnolia, and I've knitted it in Drops Nord in the plum colourway. It's a pattern that had been on my radar for quite a long time. I do like a split sleeve. But it was when Jackie from Caddy Jack's Knits suggested a Junko in June project that I jumped on board and decided this would be the perfect opportunity to finally tackle this knit. So I'll stand up and show it to you so you can see it more fully. It's got a shorter front and a longer back, which is created through the short row shaping. And then it's got these amazing sleeves. It's a little bit of shoulder detail here. And then the sleeve, which is split and then gathered. And then you've got this cable that runs up the long ribbed cuff. I know that there's some people that don't feel that comfortable about the split in the sleeve, but what I would say to you is that I have also worn this with a long sleeved top on underneath, and I've also worn it with a long sleeve dress underneath it, and it looks lovely with both of those also, so you don't have to have the bare arm. There is a wonderful project with lots of notes which will talk you through the process of doing this sweater without the split. And I will warn you that it's not just a case of not splitting the sleeve. Because of all the short row shaping that's occurring to create the longer back and also to create the drape in the sleeve, it's actually got quite a tight, not tight, but it's certainly a shaped armhole. So if you were just to seal up the split, it would become too tight around this part of your arm, and so it doesn't work. Just FYI. So there is a project though that will talk you through how to do this particular jumper without the split. And obviously I've not done that, so I can't say whether it works out perfectly, because I just followed the pattern in this case. But yes, it's a wonderful project. I really love it. I love to wear it a lot. The one thing I would say is that the original is knitted in sport weight, and I've knitted it in 4-ply, in fingering weight. And so I think that my sleeve is slightly looser. And so I am planning to rip back the sleeve and re-knit it again at a tighter gauge, just to really kind of bring it in, because I could probably do with maybe about 1 inch, 2 inches, maybe 1.5 inches less ease around this part of the sleeve. But I do love it. I think it's incredibly lovely. I love the neckline as well, kind of like a boat neckline that just sits on my shoulders. So there you go. That's the Magnolia. Links to all the yarn that's used and all the patterns will be linked in the description box also, so that you can follow up on all of that. Okay, so that's what I'm wearing. What have I completed? Well, I've been quite productive. So the first thing I want to share with you is my birds of a feather shawl. Now, you might remember that my mum and I both decided we would knit a birds of a feather shawl, and we would use the same yarn, which is La Bien-Aimée in the mohair silk in the colourway Rust, and the Helix, which is a Gotland Falkland, I think, mix, and it was in the colourway Goldenrod, Rust and Kitsune. So we didn't agree beforehand on which order of yarn we would do. So our shawls are matching but not the same. So I decided to start with the goldenrod, and then to stripe my lace sections, and then to move into the rust, and then I've got the striped goldenrod and rust and kitsune, and then move into the kitsune section. It is a huge shawl. I did measure it. It's about 2.75 meters, which is around about 9 foot from wingtip to wingtip. So that's pretty epic. I have been wearing it around my neck like this, and then I take this part here and wrap it round a second time to give me a little bit of extra warmth. For being such a large shawl, it is incredibly light and very, very warm. It's a beautiful piece. I'm very glad that we knitted it together, and it was a lovely way for us to feel connected, particularly in a year when we've not managed to be with one another as much as we would normally be. So normally I would go over to France maybe once or twice, and my parents would come over here a couple of times as well. And this year we've only managed to see each other briefly over the summer. And of course now in both France and in the UK, our numbers of COVID are rising, and so we're moving back into a variety of different restrictions on travel and on socialising. So it doesn't look like we're going to be seeing each other in the immediate, but we get to wear these beautiful shawls and remind ourselves of what a lovely thing it is to be together. Okay, so despite it being such a large shawl, I should say, and this is a pattern by Andrea Mowry, sorry, and like I said, the yarn is La Bien-Aimée. And despite it being such a large shawl, I did actually have quite a lot left over. And so when I saw that Selma of Little Big Knits podcast had a new hat pattern come out, I decided that it would be a perfect use for my leftovers. Now, I had watched Fruity Knitting's interview with Cecilia Campiocchiaro, who has 2 books out. One's about sequence knitting, and that was one interview, and then there was a second interview which was about Marling, which was her second book. So I really wanted to explore Marling a little bit more, and I thought this little hat pattern would be the perfect way to explore that. So I held a strand of the goldenrod helix and a strand of the rust mohair the whole way through, apart from at the very end, but I'll tell you about that in a second. And then I held also a strand of the kitsune. And then I maybe got up to about here, and I started to stripe in rows with holding the strand of rust and dropping the kitsune and then picking it up the next row, and then moving into just holding the rust helix, and then until I got up here when I started to stripe in, holding a double strand of the goldenrod before dropping the rust and continuing on just with the double goldenrod and the rust until I got to the very, very top when I ran out of rust mohair. However, I had the tiniest amount of gold mohair, which I used just at the very top here to complete the project. So that was a relief. Selma's hat project, for the first week, all of her profits went to Harmony House in Ottawa, which is a refuge for women and children fleeing violence. And so I just really loved that I got to buy this, I got to support a friend, and that I got to support women and children in a completely different country from myself, and that I got a really cute hat. Isn't it beautiful? I still need to block it. I tend to block my hats using a balloon. So I wash and soak my hat, and then I blow up a balloon to roughly the size of my own head, well actually smaller than my head. And then I put the balloon inside the wet hat, and then I blow it up a little bit fuller, because obviously if you put it on when it's fully inflated, then it's going to stretch the hat too much, and you don't really want to stretch the brim too much because you still want it to fit on nicely on your head. And then you leave it until it's completely dry, and that blocks it out beautifully. But I don't have any balloons currently, so I haven't blocked my hat yet, but I will block it. I mean, it's not as important, I think, to block a hat like this one. The hat that I shared on on the last podcast was a lace hat, and I think with a lace hat it really does need a bit of blocking just to allow the lace to really shine. But this is such a cute little pattern. I did make a little bit of a modification because Selma's pattern is a little bit longer. There's a bit more slouch. But I was working, as I said, with my leftovers, and I was looking to see how much I had, and I made a judgment call and decided to not do half a repeat. So mine is ever so slightly shorter. And so I had to make a couple of adjustments just to make that fit. But other than that, I think it's really cute. So it's my autumn fade hat. It's called the Westboro hat, and it is available on Ravelry, and I will link to that below. And I also really recommend that you check out Selma's podcast. I so enjoy it. She's got a lovely, warm nature and just incredibly friendly, and knits beautiful things as well. So I recommend that you check her out and that you go get yourself a pattern. So after having knitted that hat, I decided I was going to knit one more hat, which is not for me, but I will try it on just to show you. So this looks like a tiny hat, but it's not as tiny as it looks, thank heavens, because it is for my son who's 19. He is planning to go on a camping trip in November in Scotland, which to me sounds like a recipe for hypothermia. So as the loving mother that I am, I decided he needed a hat, so I'll show you. So I wanted something that was just quite close fitting. I wanted a small amount to fold over as well. I wanted it to cling to his head so that if he wants to wear it underneath a hoodie, he could. It is the classic ribbed hat from Pearl Soho, which is a free pattern. It's for DK weight yarn, which is what I had. This is Drops Lima, which is an alpaca wool blend, and it's incredibly soft. Although I did make some changes to the pattern. It's a few modifications. I looked at the projects. I so recommend that you look at projects on Ravelry, if Ravelry is still accessible to you. I looked at a couple of the projects and realised that if I didn't make some alterations, it might end up a little bit pointy, and I didn't want that. I wanted something which was a bit more close fitting to his head. So I made a few alterations in the crown decreases just so that it would fit a little bit better, and I didn't make it as long. So it says to knit it for 9 inches, and I knitted it for 7. So I did make a few alterations to it. The one alteration that I did make, which was not intentional, is that I cast it on a day when I was feeling a little bit distracted, and for some reason it was supposed to be knitted in with 3.25 millimeter needles, and on my little 50 centimeter cable I had one 3.25 needle and had one 2.75 needle, and the way that I was knitting it, it was knitting up at the smaller gauge, so which has also contributed to the fact that it is very close fitting. I used a German twisted cast on for beginning it, so it's incredibly stretchy, and of course because it's all in rib, it is actually incredibly, so even if he wanted not to put it up and just wanted to wear it, he could do that. It's a little bit more pointy that way, but then I think he's got a bigger head than me, so so there you go. That's the classic ribbed hat from Pearl Soho. The rest of my time has been working on the Stephen West Slipstravaganza. So this is a mystery knit along. If you are playing along and the clue 1 and the bonus and clue 2 are still currently a mystery to you, then you might want to look away now, and because I'm gonna show you what I've got so far. It's in my little swan bag, but I will be now moving it into my lovely velvet bag. I just wanted to leave it for as it was before I moved all my things into it. So this is what I have so far. So like I said, this is a spoiler, so if you don't want to have the mystery spoiled, then you might want to look away. But this is clue 1, the bonus clue, and clue 2. So that's the first 3 sections. Section 4 and section 5 have just been released this morning as clue 3. So I'll be working on that after I finish up here. But basically, you ready? So if you don't want to see it, look away. But if you do, okay, here we go. My yarn is Holst Super Soft in Amethyst and in 3 colours of caramel, which are called Straw, Scarab and Scots Pine. So we started off with this honeycomb section at the beginning. And I love the kind of geometric nature to this. It's made with reverse stocking stitch and slipped stitches. It's ingenious. It's very easy to do. It looks more complicated, I think, than it is. These 2 colours here, this is my straw and my Scots pine. And then we moved into this section here where we picked up our stitches, which created negative space, which I think frames the middle section beautifully. And then this kind of slip stitched textured pattern, which includes my amethyst as my main colour, and my second colour, which is scarab. And then the most recent clue was this section here, which creates diamonds. Can you see that? And you'll see that the centre row, the centre line of my diamonds looks a little bit different, and that's because, here it is, I decided to give myself a mohair dare. Now, I know that when Stephen West's kits were going out, he included with some of them a mohair dare. And I didn't buy a kit, but I have lots of mohair in my own stash, and so I decided to give myself a mohair dare. So the yarn, oh, here it is, there it is. The mohair that I included held double with the merino lace in my striped S-Jan. I still had some of that left, and this is it here. I just love this mohair. Just the kind of the mossy green and quite earthy tones with these like wild pops of neon pink and neon yellow. I really, really love it. So I decided I was going to add that in, so you can see it here. And now, you know, I've never described neon as subtle, but actually I think in the context of this shawl, I think I have subtle neon pops. So I'm really enjoying it. I've just had a look over the next two sections. I'm so excited to get started on those. The last clue will be out next Friday, so I may have a finished mystery knit to show you on the 6th, which will be when I record the next one. But it's a fascinating and very exciting knit, and I'm so pleased with how it's working out. I love the colour of it. Apparently there is going to be an option with the very last clue to make your shawl smaller or to make it very large. If you know me at all, you know that I will be going for the very large. I'm not a very large person, but I do love a very large shawl. I like to be enveloped in my schlankets, my shawl blankets. So there you go. That's the mystery knit along by Stephen West. It's called the Slipstravaganza, and I'm knitting it in Holst Super Soft with a mohair dare of Ching fibre in Punjabi. The other thing that I've done a little bit on, but really not very much, I was in two minds almost whether to show you, and this is in my Cocoon Tree. Well, now I've got three Cocoon Tree bags, but this was the Tree of Life Cocoon Tree bag, which has actually now sold out. However, I know that Lorna was updating her Etsy shop this morning with lots of new bags and new designs, so you just must go and check them out because, oh my goodness, so much beauty. But this is my half and half triangles wrap, which I mention every time. So it's a mammoth shawl. It's a lot of knitting, a lot of knitting, but that's the point. This is about a slow knit. This is not about, you know, getting it out as quickly as possible. There's no competition, there's no speed, there's no drama. This is a drama-free knit. Well, that's the intention behind it anyway. It's supposed to be something that brings us great peace and gentleness and an opportunity just to really pause and create a beautiful big shawl. So once again, mine is knitted in Holst Super Soft. This first colour was called Sweet Pea. I'll hold it close so you can see it because it's got sort of flecks of gold in it, which I really loved. And I've matched it up with Holst Super Soft in Cinnamon. Now I say every week, it does have quite a dry handle. It doesn't feel super soft currently, but I've been reliably informed that it does bloom when you wash it and becomes significantly softer. So you can see, I mean, this is huge. And that's half. So I'm currently working on the other half. So I'll be doing this for a while. And I'm doing it as part of the Caddy Jack's Half Wrap Cal. You can check out that hashtag on Instagram and see everybody's projects. It's a free pattern again from Pearl Soho. It was designed for the yarn linen quill, but that's not very available to me over here in Scotland, so I decided to go with a yarn that's a little bit more local. It comes from Denmark. If you see where Denmark is on the map, you'll see that it's actually pretty close to Scotland. And so I've made one modification, well, two modifications actually. One which is that I slip the last stitch on every second row on the edge here with my yarn held forward. So you'll see that this last stitch here has not been knit, and I've slipped it with my yarn held forward, so that when I start it again, my yarn is at the back, and it creates this smooth edge, as you can see, running along here as well. So rather than having the garter bumps along the edge, it just creates a smoother finish. And the other thing is that I used German short rows rather than the wrap and turns, which has resulted in this. So you can see I've introduced my second colour. I've not got very far with that, but like I say, this is a long-term slow project. I think the knit along runs for a year. The idea is to have a meet-up at Rhinebeck next year, 2021, on the hill. I don't know whether I'll manage to be there or not, but I can certainly dream, and I will do. So we shall see. Who knows what the world will look like in a year's time. So those are the two things that I've been working on, both shawls, both in the Holst Super Soft, but I have a couple of projects that I am going to begin. The first one is this one, which is the Getting Warmer Cowl, and it's a free pattern by Melissa of Espace Tricot, who also have a wonderful podcast, and they haven't released one for a wee while now, but I do always really love them. They're very informative and include lots of yumminess and lots of nice things to inspire your creativity. So Espace Tricot, the Getting Warmer Cowl, is knitted in a chunky weight yarn, so one up from Aran, and I've ordered 3 skeins of Cascade 128 Merino in the colourway Oporto, which is a lovely shade of blue. It kind of reminds me of the deep sea. So I have that arriving maybe today, maybe tomorrow in the post. We'll need to wait and see, but it's actually to knit for my daughter. My daughter is currently living with us. She's 22 and she lives in the front room of the apartment, which is quite a drafty, cold room, I'm afraid, just because of the way that these old places are built. So we like to wrap her up in lots of woolly layers. So this will be a lovely woolly layer for her, so that she can keep cozy while she does her sewing, which she does over beside the window, which is the coldest spot. But it does get the best light. So she is currently training to be a kilt maker. So when we ordered the kilt for my son, my eldest son, who's just turned 21, we found out that establishment had the Edinburgh Kilt Makers Academy, and that they had a 6-month course connected to it. So Aurora's always been amazing at sewing. She's got wonderful fine motor skills and a great eye for detail, and so we signed her up for the course, and she's currently doing that with the intention of becoming a freelance kilt maker at the end of it. So I think she's now in week 6 and she's really loving it, but it is quite a lot of sewing and a lot of close work, so she does need good light. So hopefully this Getting Warmer cowl will keep her nice and cozy while she does all of that. The second thing that I'm going to be casting on, and this is with some trepidation, not because of the pattern, I might add, which looks really lovely. I have been thinking about casting on the Jarvis Gloves. These are for my husband, who has asked me for a pair of gloves with fingers. I don't think I've ever knitted gloves with fingers before. I've knitted fingerless gloves and I've knitted fingerless mittens, but I don't think I've ever knitted gloves with fingers before. So, but you know how it is when a loved one asks you specifically to knit something for them. You want to be able to provide that. So I will be knitting that. I have some Drops Fable in a dark red shade, which I actually haven't brought through to show you, but I will next time, because hopefully I'll have a finished pair of gloves, or certainly maybe half finished pair of gloves to show you. And so I'll be knitting those up for him as well. So I'm a little bit intimidated, but as with all new skills, new techniques, new patterns, it's always just a case of taking your time, following the pattern line by line, making sure that you read it clearly. If there's anything you don't understand, I tend to reach out to friends and ask them for their eye over it, and to see if there's something I'm not seeing. And if there's a technique that I'm unfamiliar with, I'll go onto YouTube and look up and see if I can find a video tutorial so that I can see it being done. Or I also have the Vogue Knitting book, which gives pictorial tutorials for a whole range of techniques, so I can look that up too. So I have a wealth of support to be able to do these gloves, and I'm hoping they'll be a success. Fingers crossed. So that's what's next. Gosh, that's a lot. I really just want to then finish up with giving you some things that I've been looking at as opportunities for this conscious collaboration, or this conscious connection, and ways in which community is available to us and is calling for our support and our engagement. One of the things that I wanted to share with you along those lines was that the wonderful couple behind Fruity Knitting, Andrew and Andrea, shared an announcement last week that Andrew's received some challenging health news, which is very upsetting, and they have asked for everybody to contribute loving thoughts to hold him in an image of wellness and well-being and wholeness and health, and I'm certainly doing that, and I hope that everybody else who's been asked can do that also. But what I wanted to encourage us all to do as well is to go on to their site and become a patron. If you don't know Fruity Knitting, it is the most wonderful knitting show on YouTube. Each episode is about an hour to an hour and a half. I mean, they are very detailed. They include interviews with lots and like anybody you can really think of in the knitting world that you'd like to see an interview with. You will probably find a great interview between Andrea and that person. So there is, as I said, Cecilia Campochiaro, who I mentioned with the sequins knitting and the marled knitting. There's 2 interviews with her on either of those subjects. There's a great interview with Olga Jazzy, with Countess Blaze, with Crystal Seyfarth. If you've ever wanted to know what Shetland Wool Week is like, then Fruity Knitting have visited Shetland Wool Week on a couple of occasions and produced really amazing overviews, as well as in-depth interviews with participants in Shetland Wool Week. They've also attended Edinburgh Yarn Festival, so if you wanted to see what that was like, they've been to Vogue Knitting Live, and most recently they went to Fenu, which is an island that normally has a knitting festival but didn't have one this year, but you can go and check that out and see the beautiful traditions of that island, and a bit of the scenery, and another lovely interview with Crystal Seyfarth, who organises the Fenu Knitting Festival. So there's just, I mean, the back catalogue is immense. So they have a Patreon, and you can sign up to be a patron at 3 different levels. I've signed up. I would love for you to sign up as well. They are unsure about their schedule going forwards, obviously, because their focus really needs to be on Andrew and on their family's well-being at this particular point in time. However, I would still recommend that you signed up as a patron so that you can really delve back into their back catalogue, because there's just so much there and will keep you going for a long time. And it's a lovely way for us as a community to step forward and offer support to a couple who have really invested so much time, energy, effort, skill, knowledge into this knitting community. So I wanted to share that with you. I will be putting a link again into the description box for you to be able to check out Fruity Knitting, to sign up as a Patreon, as well as a few links to some of those interviews and overviews of festivals that I mentioned. The next thing I want to share with you is I Knit 7. So there's a group of wonderful yarn shop owners in Britain and Ireland who got together at the beginning of lockdown, I think back in March, and through conversations around, how do we keep our bricks and mortar shops running during lockdown when all the shops were closed. How do we support one another at this particular point in time? And they created something called I Knit 7. And it was a 1 week long wonderful festival of knitting and yarn. They did Instagram lives, they did shop tours, they did discounts, they did prize draws. It was really a lot of fun, and you really got to see the personality of each yarn shop owner and of each yarn shop, actually. I signed up as well to all of their newsletters, and I have to say that every single time one of their newsletters drops into my inbox, it's a complete delight. Their writing, their thoughts, their stories, their stock are all exquisite. So they are running another I Knit 7 event, which will run in November. And I'm going to link to that below as well, because I think it's going to be, again, a lot of fun, and I think there'll be some really interesting things to see on Instagram, and so yeah, I'm excited about that. What else do I have for you? Oh yes, the epic video that is Tell Me About Your Rhinebeck Sweater, which is produced every year by Christy Glass. She goes to Rhinebeck every year, and she invites people to go on film and to tell us all about their Rhinebeck sweater. If you don't know what Rhinebeck is a big knitting festival that usually happens every year. And lots of people knit a jumper especially for the occasion. But this year, which of course, like so many things, Rhinebeck was cancelled. And so Christy Glass decided that she was going to create an online version of Tell Me About Your Rhinebeck Sweater. So she asked lots of people to contribute a short video of them telling you all about their Rhinebeck sweater. She then pulled all of the footage together, edited it all, and it came out last week. It is 3 hours and 19 minutes long. So when I say it's epic, I really mean it's epic. What I love about it every year actually is that it gives you a really good idea of what kind of patterns, what kind of designers are most popular each year, and what are they producing, and what's appealing to people. What are the trends, I suppose, in hand knitting? Because obviously we're all involved in slow fashion. We're not in this fast fashion turnover where new trends come in every 6 to 8 weeks. We're much slower than that. And so I think this annual video really helps to give us a sense of what some of the hand knitting trends are. So there's that, and I think also it gives us a good sense of people's creativity, people's love for fun, people's love of connection. And I think again, in this particular year, at this particular time, when we are so fragmented and isolated because of a number of different reasons, that events like this that are managed digitally but really give us a sense of being together in very real ways. And so I think that's a lovely thing to participate in and be a part of, and to witness. So you might want to check that out too. The last two things are, I'm still continuing my love affair with Emergence Magazine. They have their podcast and they have been putting up some videos on YouTube as well. So on their podcast, they had their audio podcast. They have a wonderful essay that is read on by, gosh, his name is escaping me, but the article is called Desire Paths, and the author is based in Edinburgh, and it's such a lovely piece. It really makes you think about how you move through the world. It's written also from the perspective of being in lockdown in 2020. So it's very inspiring and encouraging and lovely. So I'm going to share a link to that. And the other one was a short video that was shared on YouTube called Blessings. And it has a lovely poem in it by David White, which I know that we all love here, our blessings. So you might want to go and give that a wee explore as well, because beautifully shot, and the poetry is gorgeous, and the sentiment behind the whole piece as well is one I think you will really resonate with. Gosh, well that was a lot. I said we were going to go for about half an hour. I think we're going for about an hour. So much goodness. But at the end of each one of my podcast episodes, I do like to share a bit of a reading. And I've had a little piece of poetry by Rumi in my mind over the last, well, for quite a wee while now, but certainly particularly over the last couple of weeks. And I wanted to share that with you before sharing with us a blessing from John O'Donoghue again, from the book Benedictus, which you've had before here on this podcast, but it's a different blessing this time. So first of all, the Rumi. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. And then the Book of Blessings from John O'Donoghue. This is a blessing for citizenship. In these times when anger is turned into anxiety and they are replacing all the lines of horizon, and our small emperors never expect our indifference to expose their nakedness. They keep their heads down and their eyes gleam with reflection from aluminium ground. And every day the media wraps the silence of our anxiousness inside a cellophane of sound, and all the while a virtual ghost surface seeps across the breathing earth and claims the allegiance of our eyes. The industry of distraction makes us forget that we live in a universe, and we become converts to the religion of stress and adore its deity of progress. That we may have the courage not to stay lost in the familiar places, but come to kneel down before the poor, to discover what we must do to turn our anxiety into righteous anger and find our way home. I am wishing you all good things between now and the next time that we meet. Remember, there is this opportunity to enter into the giveaway. Again, you just need to subscribe, like the video, and ask me a question in the comments, and I will enter you into the prize draw. And if you're watching this after the 31st of October, then you will have until the 5th of November to enter into the Instagram giveaway. And you can find me on Instagram at @amypalco. But I'll be including all those details in the description box below. And yes, in the meantime, know that I'm thinking of you. Know that I'm sending you my love. Know that I'm inviting you into conscious community with me and with like souls. And I'm sending you lots of love.